Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, and this is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I get to interview 29 phenomenal Black women. And today I am super delighted to have Samantha Fennell, who's a growth consultant for many, many corporate companies across the universe and industry. And we're going to have a great conversation. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me today.
I'm delighted to have you on. So as you know, first question, always the same, answers always hilarious, yours different. So Samantha, what is your all-time favorite job?
My all-time favorite job, and believe me, after 20 plus years having jobs, that's a tall order to choose. But I will pick one for a couple of reasons I'll share. I'd say my all-time favorite job was probably when I was the corporate fashion director at Condé Nast for a number of reasons. One, Condé Nast really was in its heyday at the time, and I got to oversee both domestic and international fashion accounts, which were frankly the envy of anybody in fashion, everybody from the LVMHs of the world to the Pradas and the Gucci's and the Calvin Kleins. And that was all well and good, but I think what made it my favorite job is twofold. One, I had an amazing team, both from sales team and also amazing business director who really helped me to learn how to negotiate in a way that has served me for 20 years. A lot of people think they know how to negotiate, but I will tell you, the team at Condé Nast Corporate back in those days turned it into a science, not an art. And in addition, I got to go to Europe a lot. I got to work with the best in class sales folks, and I loved my clients. And I had a very controversial boss, but he and I got along great, wining and dining in Milan and Paris and all those fancy things. But truly, the thing that served me to this day was really the kind of business acumen and the rigor that was truly a part of those 3 years in a way that I made great use of to this day.
That seems like an incredible job. Like, I love how you sort of gloss over that, like in the sea of like jobs Black women have had in fashion. That's just like, yeah, I just grew up from back in Brandon. Like, man, what?
Yeah,
Pretty freaking
it was
amazing.
unique. Believe me, it was a unique experience, one I do not take for granted, and it was definitely breathing rarefied air on a daily basis.
I would be like, yeah, you're like, what? Where am I? Like, I'm sure that was quite surreal. I'm like, yeah, this is a Tuesday. We're just gonna do this.
Yeah, and I think the secret was always realizing how not normal so much of my daily life was, and not taking that for granted. And I think when you leave an environment like that, it's a lot less of a shock when you kind of come back to earth, because you're never really, like I said, taking the experience for granted, and realizing that this is not necessarily the day-to-day grind that a lot of folks have to endure and call it work. So
A
yeah,
little
that was
different.
definitely one of my favorites.
That sounds amazing. All right, so we go from that favorite job. What's been the career journey for you? Like, how did we get to be having this conversation today?
Sure. It's funny because I've had probably 20 plus years of doing one core thing for very different types of businesses, which is really like creating enterprise value for the companies I work for through the lens of really great client success and really centering the client, whether that's publishing companies, whether that's advertising agencies, media conglomerates. It's really always been about bringing that growth to the organization. Usually that's through really bringing complex environments and finding the simplicity in how one can build business. So, for example, transforming organizational complexity that might include, not having really a lot of connective tissue between silos, or not wanting to leave money on the table because you've got a client pitch and you can really only fulfill 3/4 of it yourself. But if you brought in that partner agency, you could collaboratively come in and win. And, I think if I had any kind of secret sauce, it's really about how to bring disparate pieces together and make a winning combination that competitors have a hard time duplicating.
That's incredible. Well, how does one even get there? How do you even start there? Like, what's sort of like, okay, if I'm looking to do this, like, how do I get into this?
Yeah, I think traditional, and whatever traditional means in 2026, I think, first and foremost, traditional sales is the foundation. To really understand that it's not about what you're selling, it's about what services you can provide that are going to help that client solve a problem. How can you be a solution provider as opposed to a vendor with something to sell with a quota attached to it, which frankly is not their business or problem, it's yours. So I think it's really important to make that switch in your head, like, how can I help? And really mean that from a place of truly wanting to solve a problem and not just, sell your wares. And then from there, I think the level of sophistication you build, in your career will depend on a few things. It will depend on the types of businesses that you're calling on. Is there a short sales cycle or a long sales cycle? Is it a complex deal, or is it a, one call and close sort of opportunity? So in my case, I've had, I guess a little bit of each, whereby if you have a product to sell, there is a finite timeline on getting that sale completed. And so you've got that kind of pressure of, I've got a thing, I've got to close it. And then you've got more of a consultative situation where there might not be an end date. There might be a solution that you're providing that could be seen as a nice to have, and your job is to make it a must have, not because, again, you've got to sell your thing, but because, you understand the client's problem in a way, you're bringing in new insights, you're bringing in new thinking, and then you are positioning what your offering is as a real stopgap to what's keeping them up at night. So I think, as far as the trajectory, it can be product based, it can be service based, but I think, the real skill comes from the place of understanding that you're there to help and provide, as opposed to just get and take.
Really like that. I mean, I think very often folks become salespeople kind of by accident. And so they kind of know what to do and they sort of fall into it. But like the fundamentals of like how to get these things done are far more bespoke and need, full guardrails around them.
Yeah, and I'll also say, as someone who's been in sales, business development, growth for so long, I never stop looking for new ways to learn about how business is done better today. So what worked 5, 10 years ago is dated. It's, in many cases, take cold calling, for example, or, cold emailing. There's been so much change in the way people even respond to outside communications, that if you're still doing what you did 10 years ago and trying to get, a new prospect to pick up the phone or respond to an email, like, good luck to you. So there's some folks that I've just recently started following online. I was like, never going into these things as, oh, I know everything. Oh, I know. I've been doing it for years. No, I'm like, ooh, I've not tried that before. Oh, yes, I didn't realize that, the amount of LinkedIn requests that C-levels are getting has tenfold increased in 5 years. And so, don't be offended when you don't get a response, because the volume is so insane. And how do you break through that? So I do, and I advise anybody in sales and growth roles to always stay flexible in how you're approaching the process of selling, because it's always changing. Even though your core values should remain the same, methods and practices and protocols you can always be evolving and iterating on.
I think that's so true. I think the one fundamental truth that I do find with sales is it's still very much relationship based. Like if you're knocking on a door that someone's opened the door for you to knock on, it's always going to be a little bit easier than just be like, "Hi, I hear you have a sales question." Cause I get those too on LinkedIn where I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah, or,
great."
oh, I really love to connect. It's like, well, sure, I don't, but okay. So yes, in an ideal world, warm leads are the best, referrals are great, but I think anyone that's kind of relying on their own Rolodex for their sole source of success is going to be limited. So to have kind of other techniques and methods in your arsenal, and not waste people's time when you are reaching out that don't know you is really key. And just again, constantly kind of getting smarter about how do you communicate.
Yeah, well, actually getting smarter as opposed to the copy and paste one. Like the one I get a lot now is that they take someone who gave you a recommendation and then they're like, "Oh, I saw it, blah, blah, gave you a recommendation on LinkedIn. So I wanted to kind of hear more about you." And I'm like,
Now that one I
so
haven't seen.
I've
Okay.
gotten like 10 of those, all from this one person who gave me a recommendation on LinkedIn. And then they said that to me, and yeah, I can talk to you about I can try and sell you on any number of weird SaaS programs. And I'm like, so you didn't read the rest of my LinkedIn, but you just saw that and you were like, okay, that's what it is.
Right. And there's a good chance it was automated to some degree.
Oh, it's such not. And I was like, could y'all not? It's like if you could have picked other things, and as you say, I think it's like evolving how you do that. So, how do you cut through the clutter of those LinkedIn messages? How do you cut through those like whole emails that you have? It's like you gotta keep learning and try and figure out other ways to break through all that noise because it's like the best way to get in touch with me, for example, is via text. Because I won't remember like your email or your LinkedIn message. Like if you've gotten my number, you go to the high likelihood that I will respond to you. But that's just me. And I know that for a lot of other folks, it's like they don't even respond to that. It's like a DM on Instagram, for example, might be the best way to get
Mhm.
a hold of
Yeah.
them.
No, it's true. And question, if someone texted you and it was a cold text, how would you feel about that?
Oh, I block it.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, if it's a text with an introduction, we're like, "Hey, Laura, you should meet blah, blah, blah," I'm gonna respond.
sure.
But if you cold text me and you're like, "Hey, are you interested in this like, line of credit from blah blah blah?" I'm like,
Goodbye.
report spam. Like,
Exactly.
it's really interesting to see how it's been evolving. So, obviously the world sales has changed, the world of media has changed, nonprofits have changed. What would you say was your sort of moment of reset?
Yeah, I mean, I would look at even just last year for me, from 2025 to now, as a moment of reset. 2025, I was coming off of a 2-year stint at a social impact agency. I was proud to have returned them to the black, let's say, after a challenging couple of years. And for me, I got to a point where I felt like I had done everything I could do for that organization, and really wanted to take a beat to figure out, like, what is it that I want to ultimately do as far as leveraging all of my strengths and a place where I can continue to grow in a trajectory and a direction that I'm interested in growing. And people use the word reset a lot. For me, reset is really more of like a recalibration, right? It's like there's something almost inherently retro about the word reset. Like, I don't think of it as looking back so much as I do about kind of looking at like kind of harnessing all of your powers and then figuring out how you want to target and deploy them in your next move. And I was looking at the calendar because I realized, and I posted something about this on LinkedIn a month ago, but realizing that in the Chinese New Year, and I said, disclaimer, don't want to be accused of appropriating a culture that I'm not a part of, but we're entering, I think this week, like maybe even
Yes, this
tomorrow,
week.
the year of the fire horse, which is so poignant because last year was the year of the snake, which is really all about recalibrating, resetting, taking that beat and planning your next move with intention. And then the fire horse, which we're entering into now, is really all about like, okay, it's not about reckless speed. It's about like harnessing that energy, directing it in the direction you want, in motion with clarity, and really like integrating all of your powers as opposed to letting them just kind of be frayed and fragmented, as many of us have felt in the past, which usually makes you need to take that reset. So I would say, not only is it Chinese New Year telling us all this, but I feel like a lot of women, I think in particular Black women, are feeling that, whether it was voluntary or not, there is an opportunity right now to really reset and be intentional with all of the stresses and burdens that are on our plates, to really take a beat and have that power as a strategic pause to then move forward with gusto. So that's really where I am right now. And I'm consulting right now for a wonderful agency. I've been friends with them professionally and personally for years. And it's been a blessing, I think, to be able to work with a team that has great momentum. The agency has great momentum at its back, and to be able to kind of help accelerate that. And it's also given me still enough kind of latitude in my calendar, my schedule, to kind of do some of the deep work in the last couple of months that I've done. So stay tuned now that we're in the official year of the horse. And I wish every woman that, finds themselves in a position of needing to kind of take that beat. And it's really a privilege to be able to do that, to kind of use this opportunity to really reset in an intentional way, and hopefully, with conviction and not desperation or obligation.
No, I really love that. And I think you're so right on two fronts. Yeah, I mean, we are entering this week is the year of the fire horse. And I do think it is sort of quite poignant to go from the snake to the fire horse. It's like you shed and then you go.
Yep.
And I think that yeah, I mean, I look at reset as not like let me go back and reset the factory settings, but no, like reset and as you said, recalibrate all of your awesome superpowers because especially Black women, we have loads of them. And let's figure out which ones are going to be the ones that we can utilize to help us live a good life. I think I been saying this recently about what does it mean to live a good life and on your own terms. So whatever that looks
Mhm.
like, but it's the good life that you want to have. So I definitely think that you're so right about this moment that we're in to give that level of recalibration, find out what we are awesome at, what we are passionate at, and don't look at those as like those are nice to have, but let's actually lean into those and be like, if I actually use those superpowers, I can create a life for me that's good for me and
Yeah.
manageable for me and sane for me. 'Cause I think we've been all running around in circles, and you're like, I'd like sanity. It would
Yeah.
be
Just
delightful
a
to
little
have.
sanity, right? A little sanity goes a long way.
It really goes a long, long way. I mean, I think, kind of tying in our sanity to where we are right now. What's one thing you're really grateful for?
One thing I'm grateful for, I will say my mother, and I'll say that now with the poignancy of having experienced, she experienced a little health scare a couple of weeks ago, and she's fine, knock on all the things, wood and heads and everything else. But if I needed a reminder, which I didn't, about how much I'm grateful for her, that was it. And it was, it was really, I think, I hate to use the term wake up call, but it was a wake up call for her. And it was a wake up call for me to, one, just recognize my gratitude, but also like not take her life or my life or our family at all for granted. And as we are so busy doing all the things, sometimes you can kind of just go through life on automatic pilot in certain areas of your life. Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's, wellness or self-care, whatever the wedge of your life might be that you're like, you either put it on pause or you're not really full throttle in that space. So for me, it was a bit of a wake up call to really appreciate every day and also share my gratitude with her and love. Sometimes we feel like they're going to be around forever. You don't have to tell them that you love them. Yes, you do. And show it, of course, but also speak it. And so I think that was what, especially the last 2 weeks, has really brought forth for me.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's kind of speaking of like where your life is now at this particular moment, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Samantha?
Wow, what would I tell 18-year-old Samantha? I would say to, of course, work hard, but don't work at 110% for decades because it will grind you in ways that might not show up in the most obvious ways. I don't necessarily believe in quote unquote work-life balance, but I do believe, and this is something I would definitely reiterate to my 18-year-old self, to not ignore the other important facets of your life, even if you're, driving hard in your career. And it's interesting because I've seen women for, 20 years who have really doubled down on their career, not just because they're enjoying their career, but because the other parts of their life aren't really bringing them joy or not really delivering an ROI that they expect. And so the one thing we know about work, generally not all the time, is that you have some control over your own success, which feels like, rewarding in and of itself, as opposed to so many other areas of your life, which are a little bit more left to chance. So I'd say, feed all the aspects of your life that are important. Work, of course, is one of them, but self-care is critical. And the older you get, the more you realize that. Things that you could ignore in your 20s, you can't ignore in your 40s and 50s. If you do, it's at your own peril. I think also relationships are really important, and not just the business ones, the transactional ones, but to really make sure you're leaving time to foster relationships outside of a work and a professional dynamic.
I would agree with all of like, it's like, could you, I mean, like the 110% is actually so real. Because when I think about, like, again, like all that energy that you put in there, and then, like, yeah, what happens? You burn out. Like,
Yeah,
it's just gonna happen. And it's not worth it. It really isn't. Like, it just isn't. You don't want to look, I saw this with someone who passed away recently, and I'm like, oh, the things that I feel like I remember inviting her to and she couldn't make it because she was like, and it's life is very precious, and like we only have one to, and it is a gift, and you don't want to look back and be like, well, I can't enjoy this stuff now because I've just like worn myself out to oblivion. So it just
exactly.
not taking the foot off the gas. It is just like maybe, how you slammed your foot down on the gas, maybe ease up just a little bit.
Just a
Like
little.
little, if you want to go, you could go, you're going 110 miles an hour. Could we go to like 98? It's 98. Like just take it
And
off
you'll
a
still get
little bit.
there. You'll still get there fast enough, right?
Still get there, but you might not crash into the tree. Just saying,
Precisely.
like, this might
That's
be.
exactly right.
It's just that's all I ask. Thank you so much for sharing that. Last question for you.
Mhm.
Do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
I guess mine give and ask could be similar, if not the same. And I would say, um, as Black women in particular, but it really applies to all women and maybe even all people, um, I would offer the advice of making sure that when we're going into professional environments, we're asking all the right questions, not just the questions that ChatGPT might ask you or might tell you to ask, or the basics like salary and vacation. Really understand the organization you are entering into. Um, really understand culture. Really understand the health of the business, and a lot of questions that I think some candidates are afraid to ask. Either they feel like it'll be they're asking for things that are proprietary, or they're asking questions that might seem like they're concerned about the wrong things. But I would say, because I've experienced this myself, and I've seen it through other friends, that there's like a surprise once they got to the other side of a job interview sequence, and then they were kind of unpleasantly informed about XYZ that they didn't really ask for. So I'd say really explore all the opportunities that you are interested in, even and probably especially in an environment where a lot of companies are downsizing. Organizations are oftentimes just convincing in the sense that you feel like you should be grateful for even being considered. Like, still do your due diligence as a candidate, and kick the tires before you jump in.
Fantastic advice. It's just like ask all the questions. Ask why is this job open? Like who was here before? Meet all of the team, not just a team that they want you to all the ones you think are the cool ones and won't show that there's somebody terrible underneath there. Like
Yeah,
walk in with as
you're
much knowledge
being
as
vetted,
possible.
right?
Vet them.
It's a mutually important vet, I'd say, on both sides.
Absolutely. It's so true. Oh my gosh. Samantha, you're a delight. I always love chatting with you because you
Thank
have
you, Laura.
mountains of wisdom and always for a great laugh. Thank you so much for being part of 29 Days of Magic. And we'll put details in the show notes for folks to connect with you and not send you like automated messages on LinkedIn. But
Thank you very much for that, Laura.
thank you so much for being part of the show.
All right, thank you so much.
And that is a show.
Oh, the Regency era. You might know it as the time when Bridgerton takes place, or the time when Jane Austen wrote her books. But the Regency era was also an explosive time of social change, sex scandals, and maybe the worst king in British history. And on the Vulgar History podcast, we're going to be looking at the balls, the gowns, and all the scandal of the Regency era. Vulgar History is a women's history podcast, and our Regency era series will be focusing on the most rebellious women of this time. That includes Jane Austen herself, who is maybe more radical than you might have thought. We'll also be talking about queer icons like Anne Lister, scientists like Mary Anning and Ada Lovelace, as well as other scandalous actresses, royal mistresses, rebellious princesses, and other lesser-known figures who made history happen in England in the Regency era. Listen to Vulgar History wherever you get podcasts.
From the parents behind Law & Order comes a mystery the whole family can enjoy. Patrick Picklebottom Everyday Mysteries. Step into the whimsical world of Patrick Picklebottom, a precocious 11-year-old with a love for reading and an uncanny ability to solve mysteries. Inspired by the beloved children's book of the same name, this podcast vividly brings Patrick's tales of deduction and everyday adventures to life as he unravels baffling enigmas and solves clever cases. Patrick Picklebottom Everyday Mysteries is perfect for kids and is just as entertaining for grown-ups who love a good mystery. The whole family can listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.